I wanted to share a few thoughts today about prayer and fasting in families. If anything is really important in the life of a family, then the parents introduce the children to it. They help them grow in it. They don't expect the kids to have it down perfectly, as small children. Instead, it's a process of growth, the process of maturation. And the same thing is true when we think about praying with our children, praying in the family. It is a good practice for the family to gather at least once a day in front of the icons in the icon corner and to pray the Trisagian prayers and a prayer to the Theotokos. Children, no matter how young, should be present, and this will become part of their life. Of course, as very young children, they're not going to be fully focused. They might not be fully still. But when the family prays together in that way, not only do the children pick up, this is very important, but they also grow into the practice from before the time that they're able fully to understand the meaning of the words. They are surrounded by this spirit of prayer, this example of prayer. And over time, they will grow into it and embrace it. We are in the season of Lent now, and on weekdays we're praying the Lenten prayer of St. Ephrem the Syrian, with its prostrations and metanias. Well, young kids often like prostrations. They like physical activity. So again, this is a way to help children become engaged in prayer. And as children become older, then their experience of prayer can become more extensive. And in all likelihood, as they get older and into their teenage years, they may well want to say their own prayers, in front of the icons in their room. And that kind of growth and maturation can be perfectly appropriate. We want our children to embrace the faith freely, especially as they grow and develop. We want them to embrace the faith as the young adults they are becoming, and not to push too hard in a way that invites resistance and rebellion. It's a matter of growth. The same thing is true with the pre-communion prayers. Our children should be with us when we say the pre-communion prayers. And again, they're not going to understand them from small childhood, but they will grow in their understanding. And as they become older, there may be particular prayers, especially the short ones, which would be the first ones that they know by heart, or which they read aloud for the family when the family is praying. It's a matter of growth. And remember, if something is important to the life of the family, then the parents introduce the children to it and help them to mature in the practice. That is most definitely true concerning prayer. And it's also true concerning fasting. And I'll tell you how we approached fasting in our home when our daughters were young. We didn't serve them meat at home during fasting seasons. And at dinner, when we would have a meal that followed the fasting guidelines, they would have to at least try it. And if they didn't like it, if they didn't want to eat it, they could have a peanut butter sandwich. But over time, our children came to eat fasting food. And it didn't hurt their health, but it helped them to grow in the process. When we would go out to a restaurant, we would ask our children to have something without meat, if something without meat that they liked was on the menu. When they would go to friends' homes, almost always the homes of people who aren't Orthodox, given how small the community is in our town, then it was up to them, because we did not want to get involved in a kind of micromanagement which could well invite just rebellion and resistance. We all have to take into account our physical health, our spiritual health, and our life circumstances as we fast. Again, if something's important to the family, then the parents help the children grow in it. That is true about prayer, and it is also true about fasting. We would probably think it would be strange not to introduce our children to prayer, until they were 16 or 17 years old. And likewise, if we put off introducing our children to fasting until that time, it will be much harder for them to embrace it, and they will lose the spiritual benefit, because there is such a blessing when we learn to be fully present to God from the depths of our hearts in prayer. There is such a blessing when we learn to limit the gratification of our self-centered desires for pleasure even a bit. And many of us who did not grow up in the Orthodox Church can look back and see how fasting would have been beneficial to us at an earlier time in our lives. So let's not deprive our children of the benefits of prayer and fasting, but help them to grow into it, taking age-appropriate steps. I'd like for us to think just a bit more about how we ourselves may fast in light of our physical health and our life circumstances. Given my age and the fact that I work out at a gym near my home, I need a lot of protein. And fasting seasons can present challenges in that regard. But it's possible to have shellfish, nuts, and beans, and to supplement that with, for example, a vegan protein powder. I often have smoothies in which I have the vegan protein powder and some fruit and some juice, etc. It's not a good idea for us to weaken ourselves to the point that our health is compromised or that we don't have the energy to fulfill our jobs or to be decent to the people we're around all the time. I am inclined to become fairly unpleasant if I am too hungry. And of course, Lent gives me an opportunity to wrestle with that, but we have to wrestle with it at our particular level of spiritual growth. We need to look at what we eat and our level of physical activity and other dimensions of our health, and learn to fast in a way that's appropriate to where we are now. Because for all of us, the spiritual disciplines are a matter of growth. They are not a matter of meeting an objective legal standard. These are tools for humbling ourselves before God. They're tools for taking steps that will help us find healing from our passions. They are tools that will help us to be more generous and loving and kind and patient with our neighbors. But let's all be careful and to embrace the spiritual disciplines in a way that's appropriate to our strength in all respects at this point in our lives. If we will do that, then we will grow. We will gain further strength, and we will find the kind of healing that is spiritually necessary for us to follow our Lord to his great self-offering on the cross and his glorious resurrection on the third day, which we will celebrate at Pascha.